everyone. I just wanted to share a quick little exercise that I recently had to take. One of my peers gave me this little question, and I was like, ooh, let's try it, right? And so I want to share what I learned. So basically, what they wanted was the ability to dynamically create an image on an adaptive card based on the product that was selected, okay? And so I started with Power Automate, and then I used an HTTP call in Copilot Studio, and I wanted to show you both approaches. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about the before this, okay? So why do I say that? Well, this particular Copilot is connected to a site called gouletpens.com. It is actually a fountain pen site that I really love, and if you put it in your browser, you'll be able to do some testing easy because they have great content on their site. They also have awesome pens, sorry, on their site. I'm sorry. And so it's a great place to shop for pens, but it's also helping me test things, right? And so what I noticed in browsing gouletpens.com is that if I want to get back a page for a particular pen, what I need is this product code here. So I have PN91111, right? And I'll just add that. I have a few, there it is, PN91111. So basically I jotted down a few of them for my own testing purposes because I need to go to this page to query for the image. Because what we want is we want an adaptive card similar to what you see here. Now this is code that I added to Docs, I don't know, 4 years ago when Power Automate first released adaptive cards for Power Automate. I put all these sample codes in there to kind of help you get started with what your cards might look like. And I'm going to use this sample because it's just an image. And all I want to do is demonstrate to you how you can get the image and then from the image adjust what's in your adaptive card as far as the visual, right? And so I just went ahead and copied this. I brought it into adaptivecards.io and pasted it into the payload so that I could play around and revise it. So, you know, it didn't say right pen, it said something else, right? It said, actually, it didn't say anything, right? So it didn't have a title. So I kind of just updated it a little bit, but you can use that as starting code. And then once I had that code ready, I could use that for my adaptive card in Copilot Studio. And so I copied that and pasted it somewhere so I didn't lose it. So I have my little OneNote that has my sample SKUs for me to use for test. And then I have the JSON card, which represents the adaptive cards. Now that JSON card is using the image from my sample. And by the way, the sample uses curly brackets to show you where you need to replace with formulas, right? You need to replace it with dynamic content. So you wouldn't use these things in curly brackets. You would replace them. And as far as the URL text, which is this one down here, all I did was right click on the image and say copy image link, right? And that gave me the image of that bird right here, okay? So that was just me kind of getting ready to do my job. But the challenge is, can you change this image based on the product they select? Now, here you might have to do a little bit of work on helping to get them to select something, right? Because most people don't know the product SKU by heart, and you need something unique that you can use to find the product in the site, right? So you can, I mean, you can do any number of things. You can have a catalog. You can have an adaptive card that shows them the image, shows them the name of the product, and then when they click on that, you go get the SKU, right? You can even to some extent use generative AI. So if I say here, what pen is that? Do you have the Pilot Metropolitan? Maybe. Okay, let's try that. Okay. Do you have the Pilot Metropolitan? there's not a lot of pilot, there are different colors, that's about it. But then you see there is a link to it, right? And unfortunately, it's in a lot of colors, but notice that it does give us the SKU here. The SKU for the Pilot Metropolitan is PN9112. Now, why? It's because I have custom instructions. I have custom instructions included on my generative AI node that say to include the SKU. So you could go and get this answer and then take this number and push it directly into Power Automate. Push that number directly into Power Automate. But just for the sake of this demo, I am just going to force it. So I have a get product image topic, and I'm just going to take one of my sample SKUs. I think that's one of them, right? I have 3 here. We can try all 3. And I'm going to push that in. So what you'll see happen, I'm going to turn on tracking, and you'll see this happen because I've told it what the SKU is, right? It goes in and runs that Power Automate flow where it passes that SKU in. That enables Power Automate to go find the right product for sure, because there's only one product to each SKU. And then from there, we can parse that information in Power Automate and push out the image URL. So once we have the image URL, now we can use it in our adaptive card. Now, you still see the bird, and that's because my adaptive card is still the copy and paste from here. It's just the copy and paste. And you do need to start by copying and pasting the JSON that you've put together either from adaptivecard.io or from wherever way you create your adaptive cards. You need to paste that here first and make sure it shows up over here. Right? Just make sure you see it. If you see any error messages, resolve those error messages before you proceed. Okay? So when I switch this to formula, which I have to do next, I want to make sure there are no errors. If there are errors, get your JSON first, get your JSON right before you go to change the formula. Okay? Usually if you can preview it in Adaptive Cards IO, and if you can see it here, you're probably good. All right, but if you see any broken images or error messages, don't keep going. Okay, fix the JSON first, not being concerned about what picture is there, but that you see a working adaptive card. Once you see a working adaptive card, switch this to formula. And then all we're going to do is anything that needs to be dynamic, in this case it's the image, we're going to replace that with a formula. And what we did when we asked the user, when we got back the answer from Power Automate, and I'll show you the flow as well, we ended up with an image URL string. So that's the formula we need here. So if I go in here and I type, instead of no quotes, because now I'm using a formula, I'm just going to type topic first and then the variable name, right? Hold on, let me just make sure that's right. Yeah, I think that's right. Image URL, okay? And basically, it has a lot of IntelliSense. So if you don't see no errors and everything looks good, there's a green check mark, this is going to work, right? Now, you can tell why I made you check your adaptive card first, because if I save this, the adaptive card will blank out because it can't dynamically know in advance what that URL is. And that's why it's important that you get your JSON right before you change the formula so that you're not like doing trial and error over here, okay? So now that I have that dynamically in there, let's do the same thing again. Then I'll show you the flow, and then I'll show you the other way to do this, okay? So I'm just going to say get product image just because that's my trigger. I don't know, let me show you that. We are using this topic here, and these are the triggers, and so that's why I'm using that. You'll see I'm going to use a different topic where it'll be triggered differently, all right? And this is just for testing. I probably wouldn't do this same exact thing. So I'm going to paste the SKU in there, but again, remember, there's a lot of ways you can help get this SKU without actually asking the end user to give it to you. But now that I've given it, now it gives me that picture, right? And I can say yes or no if this is right. I think in my card I actually included this, but you would want to pick one of the two. Like either give them a Boolean answer or have that submission happen from the adaptive card. I did both, okay? Now, you will see every time I do this, depending on what code I put in, it's going to be dynamic. So get product image, right? Let's get another code. And again, this is just for the sake of the demo that I know the code. I think consumers would need a way to select the code, right? And then you see that the picture changes because that's a different pen. So you do want to test that this method that you choose for getting the image actually works when you change it. It should be dynamic, right? I'm going to look at the flow right after I do the third one. So I'll do at least 3 tests before I'll actually say, okay, you did it, right? Okay, so we got 3 pens. And if you're not sure, you can always look at your variables, right? Look at your variables in the test panel and take this and just paste it in a browser. If it's the right image, you know you're good, right? I'm testing visually, but you can also test using the variables panel over here. Now, let's take a close look at this flow. I think you understood everything. First thing that's important is that you need a query string. Now, in my case, I chose to use the product SKU, but you should look at the website and figure out what are the unique values that you can query against so that you can get back the one right image and not like 15 different images, right? And so I chose product SKU. You can choose whatever is a unique identifier that can help you get to the right page. If you get to the right page, then this parse JSON that you will get out of that will give you something like this, which is all the metadata for that page, right? All of it right here. Now, it needs to be parsed, and that's why we did the parse JSON, right? But after you parse the JSON, you want just one thing to go with Power Virtual Agents. You don't want that whole record to go to Power Virtual Agents, or maybe you do, but in this case, I didn't. I only wanted the image URL to come back. So in this one, I actually did a formula. I'll just make this bigger. And when you're doing these formulas, okay, I made it too big. When you're doing these formulas, you have to remember how to read the JSON. So I have pasted the result of the HTTP call into Power, not into Power anything. This is Visual Studio Code. Too many products. And I just pasted the output of the HTTP request in here using the flow run, right? But this can help me find what I want to get back, right? In this case, I wanted to get back this image URL right here, which is under meta tags. And so my compose looks like this, which I wrote up here. So you start with body, parse JSON, and depending on how you do the parse JSON, how you spell it and stuff, make sure you fix that right. And then items, because the items is an array, you can tell because of this little left black bracket here. I need to tell it which one, so I told it 0 to give me the first item. In this case, because I'm querying on a unique identifier, I just need the first return result, right? Now, page map, which is the next thing under items. See page map that has an array. I don't really want this CSE thumbnail, although you might point out that I could use it. I don't want it. I want meta tags. So I just have to do page map. It has no purple bracket here. So page map is not an array. It doesn't need an index. But the next one, meta tags, is an array. You can tell by the little purple bracket here. So it needs to know, I want that first one too. All arrays start at 0, right? So I put the index of 0 here because items and meta tags are both arrays. But then what do I want out of the array is the value underneath the meta tags. This one right here. I could get any of these, but I want that one. And so when we look at this formula, that's exactly what I pasted into a compose, right? And then now that is there. So it's very easy for me to take the outputs of that compose and drop it into my what to return to Power Virtual Agents, right? The image URL. And that's what I called it. You decide what you call this thing. But remember that whatever you call it, that's what it's going to come back as in Power Automate. So you can see it came back as image URL as a string. Okay? Now I asked a question and I added an adaptive card here so that I can kind of use it as a validation card, right? I pasted my JSON here first to make sure I saw that bird like I told you before, right? Then I changed this to formula and changed the URL of the bird to the formula topic.image URL. So now this is dynamic, which blanks out this card because it can't show you a dynamic value live in the canvas anymore. So that's when you'll go and use your testing to find that out. Now, on a side point, that's how you do it with Power Automate. There is also another way. You can call an HTTP. You can make an HTTP call and do the same thing. So basically, in the HTTP call, and I'll just open that up so you can see. This is, so finish story previous, starting story second option, right? So second option is calling an HTTP directly from Copilot Studio. Because we have all those actions now, you don't need to create a flow, really. You can just call it directly from Copilot Studio. So same question I asked, what's your SKU? Again, you can use any method you'd like to deduce that SKU into a variable and then push that into your HTTP request. So in this case, I'm again using Google search. You can definitely use Bing search. And the query string in this, see if I can open this, get it bigger for you. The query string is the SKU that I've collected, right? Now, any way I collected it. And basically, I'm just putting that together in kind of a text format so that it just gives me back that URL for the HTTP request. But it needs to be dynamic. Some people want to put this in their body, so go ahead and do that. You can also put the formula in your body. I chose, because it works with Google search, to put it directly in the URL. Okay, so now this is dynamic. This HTTP request will change depending on what the SKU is in these variables here, right? So I insert that after I see that green check mark. This is a get method, of course. It's going to be a record. You may want to change the schema, which is fine. You would just choose from sample data, and then you can add schema. And I did, the first time I think I did do that, I actually copied the schema from the output I was talking about here that you get from the HTTP request. I just paste that schema in there so that it would be the same as my Power Automate flow. And then I set a variable. So basically, the big difference between Power Automate and this is, as far as the configuration, is I need to iterate through those arrays, right? So I set a variable to my first array, which is the items, right? And this is the first array. So first topic.raw response.items, right? And raw response.items actually comes out naturally. It's kind of smart in that when you click on the X, because you've done, I think it was called raw response, it will automatically give you the items as a choice. So you don't have to really type that like you did in Power Automate, but you do have to put it in the first function so that you get the first one, right? Then I went ahead and did the same thing for that second array, all right? That second array that was in the meta tags, right? I made another record for that, and you can see that that one is kind of spelling out where this sits, you know, and I think in this case I used the CSE image. So wherever it sits in the JSON is where you would target, right? Please let me know if you want me to do this live step by step with you, or if this makes total sense, right? So now I have basically identified a variable called first CSC, which has the first item with my URL that I want. Okay? And now I basically can deduce which one that image is, right? And you'll see that when I was typing first items dot page map, I could type dot CSE image, which is, in this case, I think I chose a different one. I chose this one. And which one you choose in your JSON totally depends on your JSON. And sorry that I used meta tags in Power Automate, and I used this in HTTP. They both are the same exact image, so it really didn't matter which one I chose. But what matters is the format of how I drill into it. Okay, so now I've got that image, and so in my adaptive card, when I switch to formula, I'll be able to get to that image and pick the SRC value. Because remember, it is an array, so you're not good enough getting here. You need to go down to the value level so that you can specify what value you want in that array. And you saw it works fine. So I wanted to share this with you and also get your feedback. Put some comments in the chat down below. Tell me whether this made sense. Let me know if you already knew this and you didn't need help. Let me know if you know a faster way. Let me know if you'd like some step-by-steps. But I think this is a cool idea to be able to have dynamic images in your adaptive card. But again, this is not really a great step-by-step because what you do will depend on how the data is formatted on the website, right? So start by figuring out what is the right query to send to the site in order to get back a single product, right? Start with that question, and I think all the rest will fall into place. Okay, I hope this was helpful. I'll be talking to you soon.